What's up, everybody? I'm here with Jean-Luc Seipke, and you just got to check out Monster Hunter Wilds. Now, this is the second time you've been able to check it out. However, the first time, during Summer Game Fest, you didn't get to play, and that footage wasn't shown.
Yes. Last time, the director for the game gave a demo. Didn't get a capture, didn't get to show any of it off. I've now gotten to play the game. It's actually the same hunt that I got to see at Summer Games Fest, so now I actually have hands-on with it. I can show it to you.
So you said it's pretty similar to what you saw, but just for people who may have missed that video, may not have been following it so far, what exactly does it entail?
Sure. Well, actually, I should clarify. I got to see two things.
Oh, okay.
One thing I can't show you, and that was essentially the opening of the game. To be fair, I'm probably not going to talk about it just because it's, mostly cutscenes, stories, stuff. There's not really a reason to talk about that. You should just save that for people when they get to play it.
Mess around with the character creator?
No, I picked from a couple of presets. I picked someone who looks a lot like Susie Sphere Hunter, which I thought was funny. The only really note I have with those the opening cutscenes that I can't show is that your character actually talks now, which I think is kind of interesting.
Oh, interesting.
Take these two while you're at it. I'm sure you'll find them useful. Got it.
They're definitely going even further on the production value of the cutscenes in this game. But that's all I really have to say about that. What I can show you is the second thing I did, which is an early hunt you get to do. This is actually multiplayer. It was a 4-player hunt. I played with a couple other people. I think the creature is called a Doshiguma. It's like this giant bear-looking creature. They've shown it off a couple of times. First off, we get to see the kind of camp area that is in the game. What's cool about it is the camp is entirely on the same map as like the rest of the game. Like there's no separation between like the camp and the hunting grounds anymore. There's still multiple hunting ground maps. And this one map that we got to play is the one they've shown a lot, mostly in footage.
So when you say there's multiple, are they all still connected like to that same space, or does it seem like you load into a different area?
I think I can't say definitively, but I think you still load into different like map
but your
areas.
Camp is there.
But your camp is always like attached, so you're never needing to go back to like a separate like camp area. That's where the blacksmith is. That's where your tent is. That's where like cooking is. All that stuff. There wasn't much to like wander around and do in that area yet, because I think it was still kind of early in the game. But I did get to like go to my tent, swap out my weapons, which brings me to another big change. Is you can have a secondary weapon now, which is pretty huge.
Oh,
so
like are they special weapons, or are they like you can pick two weapons?
It's
essentially
just two weapons.
Oh, that's
so you pick
awesome.
your primary weapon, you can pick a whole secondary weapon, which is pretty crazy and pretty, I would say, dramatically changes up the possibilities of the game. So for me, I went with the longsword, and then I took the light bowgun as my secondary. And then we went off to fight this creature. The creature shows kind of some of the new herding system they have. So some monsters will be in herds, and you have to hunt the alpha. So what we need to do is we need to get it away from the herd. And the way we did it with this one is you use like a large dung pod, and you just shoot it at them, and they kind of like get spooked, and they all like spread out and run out in different directions. And then we can like, single out the alpha and chase them down. I'm curious if there'll be different ways you need to hunt other creatures, but at least with this one specifically was the dung pod. Pretty simple, but just kind of like a cool new addition. The amount of creatures on screen is really impressive still. The game also looks pretty impressive. I will say, as you can probably tell in the footage, the frame was a little rough at spots, and also there was a lot of pop-in. I was playing on a PS5, but also, of course, this is still like an early build.
Yes.
So
2025,
2025, no actual release date yet. So while I obviously hope the final game is smoother, it's still too early for me to pass judgment on any of that stuff. But just to give some context on like what I was playing. But the actual like fighting of the monsters themselves feels great. It feels very similar to World. It's got a lot of that like heft, that weight to the animations that I would say World has over Rise. Like Monster Hunter's always had like a weighty animation system. That's kind of what makes Monster Hunter. But I think this feels like it's taking it like even further in the way that I thought World did, versus where like Rise was maybe like a little bit snappier, if that makes sense.
Now, one thing you mentioned during Summer Game Fest was that a lot of the hunts kind of occur more naturally. You're not necessarily picking up a quest and then readying up your party and heading out. Instead, you can just kind of explore, pick a monster, hunt it, and then that sort of becomes the quest. Is that still the case? Did that feel natural?
That is still the case. I mean, obviously in this demo, they kind of like forced us to pick
all
this.
Right, fight this.
You're going to fight this specific thing. But yes, there is no quest board. You just go and you're like, I'm going to hunt this monster. And then when you start hunting that monster, it says like, hey, that's your quest now. I even went and tried to fight another monster later that it said like, hey, you can't make this a quest right now, which is interesting. I assume, I don't know if that was demo related or maybe like story related, where like, oh, later on you can unlock it. But basically like attacking a monster starts a quest for that monster. There does not seem to be a quest board in the open world, which is, I think, super cool and interesting. Like it feels less restrictive than those past games.
So another thing too that they kind of teased in the trailer and we're seeing right now is there's a lightning storm going on.
Yes.
How does that work? How does that affect gameplay? Is it just there to look pretty? Can you actually get hit by these lightning bolts?
I did not get hit by the lightning bolts. I think you maybe can. So the lightning storms just kind of will happen at random periods. And they do drastically change up, not only just like visually, obviously, like you said, and maybe like your visibility into the environment, but it also changes up like what's available. So when there's lightning out, like the lightning bugs, the little flash flies will like show up more. Certain fauna changes. It also causes this other monster, which is kind of like the big territorial monster of this region, it seems, which is this huge lightning dragon. They show up specifically when the lightning storm happens, which is kind of neat. I tried to fight them. I died horribly, but it was fun. It was a fun little challenge on myself. Let's talk combat. So the big thing that they've been talking about with this game is the focus mode. Yes. Which is this new ability that you have regardless of what weapon, where essentially by holding the left trigger, it gives you a more finite control, like a proper reticle pops up, and you can kind of get more precise with your movements on your attacks. So the way that kind of played with the longsword was pretty nice because I was able to kind of like more accurately aim at like a leg or like a specific body part. And as a part of the focus mode, you'll actually see weak areas glowing in red. So when you attack an enemy and you do enough damage to a certain body part, that body part becomes weakened, and then everyone who's their focus mode can see it's weakened. So like it would happen on like their back or their face, and then it's like hit that, keep hitting that for more damage. So like you'll kind of want to like coordinate with your teammates and see like, okay, they've been attacking this, we should all keep attacking this specific spot now. And then also just focus mode, just like at least for the longsword, I felt like it gave me more control when I was trying to like time a certain attacks. A big thing in Monster Hunter is that like weighty animation swing. So when you miss it, you're like, they just move out of the way and then you're just like attacking nothing for like 5 seconds, which still happens a lot. But the focus mode kind of gives you like a greater sense of control, which is cool.
That seems like a perfect fit for Monster Hunter because Monster Hunter doesn't really have a traditional lock-on, doesn't have a lock-on at all. And I don't think you could add a lock-on to Monster Hunter. I don't think that would necessarily work with the style of combat. Yeah. So I feel like this greater control of where you can slice your sword seems like the way to go.
Just a little bit more control over it. Obviously it I wouldn't say it like makes it easier necessarily. It's more just it gives you like a little bit more control.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I played the longsword. I will say, at least in my experiments with the longsword, it's very similar to how it was in Rise. It wasn't too different. I also messed with the dual blades, and again, they kind of felt very similar. I know they've put out like a video detailing all the little tiny changes. You can probably go watch all of those if you want to see the specifics. But I mean, like all the weapons just like felt great. It was cool having two. So for example, when we're riding on the mount, I would like switch over to the light bowgun so that while I was riding, I could just like pop off a few shots on it and stuff, which is really neat. The cool thing about the mount is it has an auto run feature. If you hit up on the D-pad, it will just automatically start running to whatever you're hunting.
So it follows the destination. It's not just forward. Cool.
Yes, it specifically will follow the destination. So if you're hunting a monster, it'll follow that monster. You can get back manual control at any time, so you don't have to auto run. But the nice thing about the auto run is you can just do that, and then it's like, okay, I don't have to worry about that. So I can focus on healing up, or like applying a buff, or switching weapons, using your like sharpening, all that stuff. So really cool. Like, it's nice because this game definitely continues that Monster Hunter tradition of overwhelming levels of menus and systems sometimes.
Sure. Yeah, it sounds like a streamlined Monster Hunter experience in terms of like how you get into these missions, how you
Yes.
play with friends, but it seems like it's still very much Monster Hunter in terms of
absolutely.
In terms of, like the combat, the builds, the
depth all seems still there. If anything, it seems even more advanced with stuff like the herds and the way monsters interact and with how big the maps are now. Like, it's huge, like this map.
Did you get a sense of how big that area was?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give like an exact measurement based on previous maps, but it felt to me like one of the biggest Monster Hunter maps I've certainly wandered around in. I mean, like the upper area was this kind of more like grasslandsy kind of area, and then like to the south was this giant like expansive desert with like these huge
where you are
dunes,
right now.
which is where I am right now in the footage. These massive dunes, really impressive looking, and then there was like even the kind of these more winding caves, sort of like to the left. I kind of did like a little just once around to just kind of explore the area, and I still feel like I probably barely scratched the surface of everything about it, which is always what I love about Monster Hunter maps. There's a lot to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it looks great. Really excited for it. You kind of mentioned it, but it seems like the only sort of not red flag, but concern is your game crashed at one point. It's a little buggy. It's early.
It's early. That's a preview build. I'm not too worried about that yet. Like I said. I came out of Summer Games Fest thinking that was the coolest thing I saw there, despite having not actually played it. And now that I have played it, I continue to think it's the coolest thing I have seen in a while. Like, it's just, I am so excited for this game. And if everything they're showing comes together, like, I really think this is going to be like one of the best Monster Hunters in a while, and probably like maybe one of the best games of 2025. So,
hell yeah.
Yeah.
And there you have it. That is Monster Hunter Wilds. It's supposed to release in 2025. And when we get more news, you'll be the first to know. We'll see you next time.